Going for two live, it's your boy here, Dan, at the B League Says, coming at you with a pick and prop show for week 13 of the NFL slate. We're here talking about some prop bets. We're going to cover the Sunday slate and a couple picks for Monday night to go over as well. We're only going to be doing that. We're not going to run the solo show for Monday this week. We have some other family priorities coming up, and I'm going to muddle them all into one. We're going live today, so forget the ticker down the bottom that says it's pre-recorded. This is me live and in color, and we're going to get going into our prop bets. But before we do, Underdog Fantasy or underdog.com, promo code GF2 for 100% matching deposit up to 250 big ones on your initial outlay. So if this is something you have done before, then feel free to kick in. Good day, Jamie. Yes, it is a very good day. It is colder than a witch's tit out here. I'm sure you're feeling the same out where you are as well. As always, come find us on our Discord, Going for Two Live. It's free. You can come get those start and sits questions answered. Get them answered pre before you join in tomorrow's show that kicks off at around 11 o'clock with Jamie, Kyle, and Topher every Sunday morning. We don't have to worry about Jalen Waddle versus Elijah Moore this week. Waddle sucked. There we go. We have our answer already, and I think Elijah Moore's going to do a little bit better against Denver, as it might be. If not, we are going to start talking about the props that we have for this week coming up. So we're going to cover 3, 4, 5 different props for Sunday slate, and then a couple for Monday in one hit. But first of all, pick number one, we're going to start with quarterback sensation. He's had a little bit of a down year so far, but we're going to go talk about CJ Stroud at Jacksonville. We're going to go higher than 259.5 passing yards at the Jags this week. Weird season so far for the second-year quarterback, who took obviously 2023 by storm. His O-line has let him down a fair bit. I think this year he's been getting sacked probably at a higher rate than he was last year. He's had receivers getting injured. Obviously, they trade for Stephon Diggs. He gets hurt. Nico Collins has the hamstring. He's not playing. They're relying on Tank Dell, who was recovering from getting shot. And then you got John Mechie and Xavier Hutchinson and a bunch of guys. Robert Woods, I think, popped up at one time as well. So you're looking at an unideal mid-season for him this year, and you look at his numbers, they have obviously been down. But obviously from a fantasy standpoint, everyone's going, oh, my God, he's been terrible. I mean, the touchdowns really – and obviously we could talk about Joe Mixon and the run game and having a better run game, better than Devin Singletary and Damian Pierce last year. We could talk about that too. But, the bounce back is probably there. Look, he's had for over 240 yards in 3 of his last 5 and over 255 in 2 of those as well. So for him, it's generally there. But what you're not seeing is touchdowns. I know that sounds weird to say, but you talk about, like, from a fantasy perspective, his touchdowns this year is down a fair bit. I think, what did he have? He had something like 20 touchdowns at this point last year. He's currently at 14. So in 3 of his last 6, he's had 0 passing touchdowns as well. So the fantasy community looking at that is what the problem is. And I think that tends to like offset or upset the betting community as well, because everyone's hearing he's not doing something. He kind of has been. Again, he's gone over 240 in 3 of his last 5 and over 255 in 2 of those. So he's been okay at that point as well. So, in that regard. But what he gets this week, he gets a team that's put up, 340 yards on him earlier this year against Jacksonville. I know he was at home. It was earlier in the year, but, he put up 340 on him. And a team he averages 309 against, and he's never had less than 280. So, we've got a team that he's played against frequently. Since a rookie, he's played them 3 times. It's one of his more common teams, and he's absolutely pummeling them for 309 on average. I feel like that's pretty good as well. They allow around 280 yards per game as well. So get on the Stroud discrepancy this week. He has the rub of the green on them. Might be a bit of a bounce back week for him as well. Pick number 2, we're going to talk about a lot of people's favorite player. I don't know why. We're going to talk about Drake London. We're going to go lower than 5.5 receptions against the Chargers. He is at home this week. Not overly thrilled to see he or Darnell Mooney. So London had the hip injury. Mooney Achilles on the injury report later in the week. That's not something that you want to see when it comes to putting bets on. You don't want to say, hey, look, this guy's going to outscore his projection, but he was also obviously hurt during the week, which isn't something you want to see. But, they're off the injury report for now. But, it is something to keep in mind coming into a home game against a team that's been tough on receivers this year. Look, the Chargers were not only in the bottom 10 for allowing yards to wide receivers, but also giving up the 5th fewest receptions per game to the position as well. So they have been very stingy on wide receivers this year. Look, London, we have seen this year he can get home with minimal attention as well. You look at last week, 3 for 60. Like, he can have big games off not a lot of work. He has that in his locker, which is weird because conceptually you'd think that might have been Darnell Mooney's role, and it seems to be a little bit different. Mooney's been getting a lot of the work too in that regard. But despite the targets being there for him all season, he's 13th in targets this year. He's 24th in yards per game. He's currently going under on his receptions line of 5.5 in 3 of his last 4. And I kind of think we've got to wait another week before he starts to even out a bit. We're going to head over to pick 3 this week. We're going to talk about the Rams receivers. I feel like they have a pretty good matchup this week against the New Orleans Saints. They're at New Orleans this week. Puka Nacua, I'm going to go over on both. Nacua at 78.5 and Cup, about to say something I shouldn't have said there, at 69.5. You guys want to talk about a mess? We're going to talk about the Saints and the injury report because they have been fighting that battle all year long. They've been getting hammered on the injuries this year. It's one of those things, you look at from the top down, Derek Carr, they were flying to start the year. He gets hurt with the ribs and they just kind of plunk after that, all the way down to Kendre Miller, who I don't think he might have seen 1 carry this year. That's the sort of year they've had. He's been on the injury report. He's on the IR, and I don't even think he needs to be there. That's kind of the way the Saints season's been going. But, you know, they've been gashed across the board. And in the middle of that, they've traded away Marshall and Lattimore as well to Washington, making their quarterback group even weaker. As a result, receivers have been able to feast on them. They've given up the 5th most yards to wide receivers this year. A part of that shuffle has been Alontae Taylor from the slot to actual corner, and they've moved Ugo Amadi in as nickel. His tackle's been up all year, so when his tackle prop comes up, I'd like to see what that is. They're not out yet, but I feel like this could be a game with him against the Rams that could be flying all over the place, especially if he's tailing Cooper Kupp. But yeah, I think you might be seeing a fair bit of him today. If that's the case, get on Ugo Amadi as well. Look, I think their DB shuffles pairs up well for the Rams receivers as well. So they have started to find some forward now that they're actually healthy. Like Kupp, obviously, what did he have? The ankle or the hamstring? Same thing with Nacua. They've kind of been in and out of the lineup, but they started to mellow out a bit in that regard. They seem like they are on the right track. Nakua's had, 98 or more yards in 4 of his last 5, and Kupp is steady as ever. He's going over 70 in 3 of his last 4 as well. So they're hitting that quota quite easily this over the last month or so. Feels like the injury bug is off the Rams, and I don't want to jinx them in that regard, and I can see a run coming on. I think there's still a chance to take the West. I know that sounds weird. See how Seattle kind of in and out of games. I'm going to talk about the Cardinals in a minute. They've had a bit of a rough run at least. They've kind of been in and about. San Fran have started to lose games. They've got a tough trip to Buffalo this week. It's there for the taking, the West, for any team that can find a bit of consistency. I feel like that might be the Rams as they start to mellow out from those injury problems that they once had. Speaking of the Cardinals, we are going to talk about pick number 4, Trey McBride. He's going to go lower than 59.5 receiving yards and lower than half a touchdown because why the fuck wouldn't he at Minnesota? Look, first of all, shout out to the Vikings secondary. Guys, they've been smashing tight ends all year. Look at Smith, Bynum, and Metellus, all those guys in that middle of that secondary there. They've been outstanding this year. They've basically kept teams to doing pretty much nothing across the board. Vikings have only allowed 2 touchdowns to the tight ends this year through 11 games. It's kind of amazing. Keeping the position around 46 yards per game as well. They've basically tightened that down on lockdown. There's some decent tight ends in that division. You've got Kraft, you've got Laporta, Komet. There's some decent players that they've actually had to meet a couple of times. They're keeping them quite quiet in that regard. You know, they're a sharp team at 9-2, I think, the Vikings. I think they're going underappreciated as it would be. We're looking at Trey McBride as well. He's had an incredible season, all the while not scoring a touchdown. He's yet to score this year, which is still, I feel like I put the jinx on players when I say they haven't scored this year and then they go off and do it. So, hey, maybe don't listen to me. He might be due this week. But when you look at it, he's still second in yards per game amongst all tight ends at around 68 or so. In terms of output, he's doing everything right. I can't actually hate that for him. However, I'm looking at this matchup and what the Vikes allow, and I'm not sure I don't think this is the week he's going to support that quota. Yeah. Thank you, Jamie. I'm going to leave that one out. I'm glad. I'm happy for you. I'm not going to say that out loud, but I am very, very pleased for you to be doing that. So there are 4 picks for the week on the Sunday slate. We're going to look at the Monday night game, and it's Cleveland at Denver. You talk about a mess of a couple of teams. I don't know what to make of either team at this point. I actually like the Browns. I feel like they've been – the games that they've won, they should have, and the games that they lost, you could make an argument that they probably have been unlucky in certain degrees, and that might have been a Watson thing or a last play of the game sort of a thing. But I feel like they've been unlucky this year in certain elements as well. They now get to go to Denver on Monday night, and I just could not be less thrilled about this. I actually don't care for this game at all, and being motivated to find you props for it. There were a couple that stood out, and I thought, okay, we're going to talk about a couple of these. And we're going to talk about a guy who gets his revenge game. We're going to talk about Jerry Jeudy. I feel like this is the week, and I know Jamie's mentioned him on the Sunday show a few times. Jerry Jeudy, higher than 59.5 receiving yards. And I know it's a bit of a dangerous line to ride considering how good Denver's defense has been this year, but you get one shot at a revenge game. And look, let's talk about this for a second. Every season that he was in Denver, even halfway through his rookie campaign, it sounded like they were going to trade him the whole time. It was either him or Sutton. They're going to trade him. That's going to wear down on someone's mindset in certain degrees. And I feel like he's got a big game in him. He's had a few in him lately. We're going to talk about that too. So weird working environment for him in Denver. We're going to talk about that. Before I get to Judy, I will say this isn't the best matchup. Denver have been stout on defense all season long, giving up the fifth fewest yards per game to wide receivers, around 132 yards per week. So Tane interception. Book it. Yes, Jamie, I agree with you on that one. Jameis is good for it, and so is Tane. I feel like he's going to test his luck a few too many times. But back to Judy. We're in 4 games with Jameis Winston this year. Has topped his previous 8 games with Watson, which says all you need to know about that. And that span on points per game, he's sitting at 17 points per game in PPR. So if those want to get a PPR or they want to get on points per game, props, have a think about that. Maybe drop a couple points for half PPR. Average slightly under 95 yards per game. An average of 6 receptions per game. 15 yards per reception is no joke either. So his transition from Watson to Winston shouldn't be a surprise. We saw it from Watson to Flacco a year ago. But the idea that this guy's going to go 6 for 95 on average over his last month, that tells you a lot of what you need to know. Generally, it's not been there for him this season, but those yards and receptions at 5.5, I like that a lot for him this week. Judy didn't leave Denver on bad terms. Yes. The answer is always yes. Sterling Shepard didn't leave the Giants on bad terms. And there he comes out slating them for no reason. Like, it happens. And every Giants fan will love Sterling Shepard for the end of time. But once you leave, and I think you've got a problem with every team. I think there is. I got to think at this point, the way Judy was treated in Denver, I don't remember a team where every time it hit round 5, they were like, we're trading Judy or Sutton and no one knows. And it was like that the whole way through. I would hate that as a player, hearing, oh, you're getting traded somewhere, and it never happening. And to Cleveland with Watson, who were just struggling as well, I don't know. I don't know if I'd have been thrilled about that at all. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Probably wrong. We're going to talk about someone else for our last pick of the show. We're going to talk about Javonte Williams, lower than 39.5 rushing yards. Does anybody know what the fuck is going on with their run game? Seriously, what cracked out schizo was designing these plays for Denver? I don't really know. You kind of watch them and you go, what's we're going to get Audric estimate the ball. No, we're not. Okay, we're going to get Javonte Williams the ball. No. You know what? We're going to protect Jaleel McLaughlin. No. I don't know what they're actually doing in Denver or who's coming up with this, but it's kind of shit. Let's face it. Let's call it what it is. They use a committee, and it's a bad committee, and Nix is normally the guy that leads the day with rushing yards at the end of the week. It's a mess. Broncos are a mess. So speaking of a mess, let's talk about Javonte Williams a little bit more. He's had 1 or less yards in 2 of his last 3 games. So he's had 1 yard or minus 2 yards in 2 of his last 3 games. That's real. And they've given him 39.5. He had a decent outing, a sandwich in between. I think he went for 49. 49 between a 1 and a 2.5, minus 2. That's kind of shocking. The way that Williams looks as well. Yeah, let's hope so. Blake Watson, a full workload. Let's go. I mean, if Sincere McCormick can do a half-decent job for anyone, Blake Watson's got to be a shot, right? For what it is, you look at Javonte Williams, his tells are kind of there. If he has less than 10 carries, he misses dismally. It's like one of those, he'll be 8 for 27. They give up pretty quick on that rotation. They're like, it's not happening. Let's move on. I think only once he's hit any quota going with 10 carries. I think that's basically where he's at. So, yeah, you get a team in Cleveland have allowed the 7th fewest rushing yards per game, the 8th fewest attempts per game. Weirdly enough, they've let in 10 rushing touchdowns, but they don't let anyone do anything between, any of the yards. It's just, they get close and then it happens. I think they've let in 10 rushing touchdowns for the year. So I don't believe, he'll go anywhere near what we need to offer. He might get a reception or a receiving touchdown from 5 out or something, but I just don't see him getting the actual yards in him this week. Speaking of this week, we've done 15 minutes. That's 5 minutes past my bedtime. We're going to wrap up today's show nice and easy. But before we do it, as always, underdog.com, underdog fantasy, promo code GF2 for 100% matching deposit up to 250 big ones. There's some Black Friday Day specials that I have on their user interface. I just said user interface. I don't even know what that means. It doesn't even matter. But you can go over there and you can find that over there too. As always, Discord, going for 2 live. You can come in, join. It's a free Discord. You can get all your dynasty questions, trade questions, waiver wire ads, and all that sort of stuff, questions answered in there. It's free. Just come find it in over there and join in on the fun. As always, the Sunday starts and sit show with Kyle, Topher, and Jamie kicks off at, I think, 11 o'clock every Sunday. My mind's to date. I don't really know, but it's always there, and they always answer your questions. Very popular show for going for 2 live. But before I round off for the day, let's go over these picks one last time. Let's go pick number 1, CJ Stroud at Jacksonville, higher than 259.5 passing yards. Pick number 2, Drake London, lower than 5.5 receptions at the Chargers. Pick number 3, the Rams receivers, Nakua and Cup. Nakua over or higher than 78.5 receiving yards. Cup higher than 69.5 receiving yards at the Saints. Pick number 4, we're going Trey McBride lower than 59.5 receiving yards and lower than half the touchdowns. 11:30. Thank you, Jamie, very much. And then we're going to look at Monday night's props. Cleveland at Denver. Pick number 5, Jerry Jeudy higher than 59.5 receiving yards. And a bonus pick there, Javonte Williams, pick 6. It's not a pick 6. Javonte Williams is going for 39, lower than 39.5 rushing yards. I can't state that enough. Lower. As always, I'm Dan. I am at the B League Says. You can find me somewhere. I'm not going to answer you. That's Jamie Topher and Kyle's problem at 11:30 every Sunday. Until then, safe bets, happy punts, cheers, and goodbye.